I don't know if it is. Oh, there it goes.
Okay, so good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Good Erev, happy Thanksgiving. It's a holiday based on being thankful and appreciative and recognizing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even if
That's right, exactly.
even if it's maybe not on the level of what the Torah says in 100%, but it's acknowledging Hashem and being thankful to Hashem for all the chesed, and in a Medina shel chesed, in a country of chesed, which is the United States, and the Hashem should continue to bless the United States to have sechel and the understanding and the intuition to know, to be a shining light for society in the world that depends on its moral strength to navigate in these difficult times. So l'chaim, l'chaim. Of course, this is Shabbos Parshat Vayetze, and we're in the first week of Kislev, a full week of Kislev. Tonight is the 7th of Kislev, and Friday is the 8th of Kislev, and on Shabbos is the 10th Tes Kislev. Tes Kislev is a huge day in Chabad because it's both the birthday and the Yahrzeit of the Mitteler Rebbe, and it's also Erev Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos is the Yom HaGeulah, the day of redemption of the Mitteler Rebbe. The Mitteler Rebbe Dov Ber Shnei Ori, who is the eldest son of the Alter Rebbe, the successor, the Mamali Makom, took over the leadership. The Chassidus of the Mitteler Rebbe is tremendous. He's known as Rechavi Sanar. He's Bina. The Mitteler Rebbe is known as the Bina of Chassidus, which is the understanding of Chassidus, and a lot of the Mitteler Rebbe's Chassidus is built on his father's Chassidus. So if you have the Torah Or, if you open up the Torah Or and the Likutei Torah, which have the especially the Torah Or, because we have the Torah Chaim, which is from the Mitteler Rebbe primarily on Breishis and Shmois. So when you open up a mimer like this week's mimer, let's say V'shafti B'shalom Beis Avi, which we're going to talk about in a second. So you have a mimer, a few pages with a beer by the Alter Rebbe. It's a tremendous. It's taken apart that when you learn the mimer of the Mitteler Rebbe in Torah's Chaim on, for instance, V'shafti B'shalom Beis Avi, is you realize that you never even began to understand the Alter Rebbe's mimer, because he opens it up as such, because Bina is that attribute of understanding. Chachma is like a flash, and in the flash you see something tremendous, you just don't understand it all. So you're connecting to something very deep, but when you understand it, it comes another whole picture. And this is the Chassidus of the Mitteler Rebbe. The Mitteler Rebbe lived Chassidus. The Tzemach Tzedek said that if you were to cut the arm of the Mitteler Rebbe, blood wouldn't come out, Chassidus would come out. He was so dedicated to Chassidus that they say that when the Mitteler Rebbe had to get married, we're going to talk a little bit about the Mitteler Rebbe, because the Rebbe says that, first of all, in 1950, the Rebbe was farbringing, 1951. The Rebbe was farbringing on Yud Kislev. Yud Kislev, you have to remember, is 60 days before the Rebbe accepted leadership, because Yud Kislev then is Asar B'Tevis, and then is the Yud Shvat. And the Rebbe on Yud Kislev farbringed very strongly about that we have to write a pan to the Mitteler Rebbe. We have to write a note, a pidyon nefesh, to the Mitteler Rebbe asking for bracha. And how do you write a note to the Mitteler Rebbe asking for bracha? The Rebbe says by learning his Chassidus and singing his Nagunim. So at a farbringen, and especially a Yahrzeit and a birthday, now we're Erev the Yahrzeit, we're Erev Shabbos Kodesh, getting ready for the Shabbos to celebrate the birthday and the Yahrzeit of the Mitteler Rebbe. The Mitteler Rebbe would be going into his 252nd birthday, I believe. 252 years ago, when the Mitteler Rebbe was born. If you were to say to Tillim of the Mitteler Rebbe's capital would start on this year, Kuf Gimel. Means he lived the whole cycle of 150 years, from Aleph to Kuf Nun. So if you said the whole Tillim would be, you complete it one, and then you continue after you finish 150 years, you start from Aleph again. So the Mitteler Rebbe would be holding Kuf Gimel, which means he'd be turning 252 years old. So 2 years ago was the birthday. And he passed away, which only great tzaddikim passed away on their birthday. Of course, we know this from Moshe Rabbeinu. The Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th of Adar and passed away on the 7th of Adar. So back to the Mitteler Rebbe's desire for Chassidus, we'll talk a little bit about the geulah, and then we'll go to the Parsha, that the Mitteler Rebbe when he had to get married, so they brought different suiting shidduchim. The end turned out his wife, Rebbe Shena, who was a tremendous woman, the mother of the grandmother, so to say, of the mother of the wife of the Tzemach Tzedek. Means that all the Rebbes are descendants of the Rebbe Shena, because the Alter Rebbe married. The Alter Rebbe's son was the Mitteler Rebbe, married the Rebbe Shena. The Rebbe Shena had a daughter, Chaim Mosia, who was the Rebbetzin of the Tzemach Tzedek. And of course, the Rebbe Marash down, meaning the Rebbe Rashab and the Friedrich Rebbe, are all grandchildren of the Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbetzin Chaim Mosia the first. And our Rebbe, who married also Chaim Mosia, so she's also a descendant of the Tzemach Tzedek through her father, and the Rebbe is a Tzemach Tzedek through his father. They were cousins. The Rebbe's father, Reb Leivik, goes back up to the first oldest son of the Tzemach Tzedek, so the Bechor of Rebbetzin Chaim Musia the first, again, and the descendant of Rebbetzin Shena. And the Rebbetzin Shena was a very special woman. I think it was the Rebbetzin Shena who said that that by us, I think she said that by us also there was miracles on the floor like anywhere else, but who had time to pick them up because there was so much Chassidus. And when the Mitteler Rebbe had to get married, he said to his father brought him up different ideas of shidduchim. He said it's not so important who he marries; it's more important that he gets married. So they asked why. So he says because at a marriage, it's customary that the Alter Rebbe would say a lot of Chassidus by the different weddings and the pre-wedding party and the Shabbos before the wedding and the Ufruf and the Shever brachas. So the Rebbe was the Mitteler Rebbe was so excited about the opportunities for the Alter Rebbe's father to say Chassidus that to him that was one of the reasons of the urgency to get married. Of course, there was the mitzvah of marriage and of building a family, but when the urgencies was that there's going to be Chassidus. They say another story. We say two more stories about the Mitteler Rebbe and Chassidus, because it's the month of Chassidus. This month, we also celebrate Yahrzeit Kislev, which celebrates the victory of Chassidus, when the Alter Rebbe was imprisoned for teaching Chassidus, and the voices against the Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe says, so the Mitteler Rebbe the Alter Rebbe had a daughter Freda. Anyone who has been to the Alter Rebbe's kever in Haditch, next to the Alter Rebbe is another kever, is another tombstone, and that's of his daughter Freda. The Alter Rebbe is only buried with one of his children. If I remember correctly, I don't remember that his wife, the Rebbetzin was there. The Rebbetzin was there, and Steiner Sarah. Sorry, the Rebbetzin was there. I think, but his daughter Freda is buried next to him. Freda was his daughter, very close to the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe would say Chassid especially for Freda. When the Alter Rebbe would go alone into Freda's room and say teachings of Chassidus that no one else was allowed to be in the room. But the Rebbe, when he heard about this, he's not going to miss out an opportunity to hear Chassidus. So he would he would hide under Freda's bed, and when the Alter Rebbe would come in to say Chassidus, I believe Freda was older than the Mitteler Rebbe. When the Alter Rebbe would come in to say Chassidus, so the Mitteler Rebbe was hiding under the bed. And one time the Alter Rebbe was saying Chassidus about explaining the different garments of the Kohen Gadol, Choshen and the Ephod and the Me'il and the Mitznefes, all the difference. And the Alter Rebbe wasn't talking about the belt. He wasn't getting to the belt. So the Mitteler Rebbe wanted to hear what the Alter Rebbe had to say about the belt. So he wanted Freda's attention, that Freda should ask her father, what's with the belt? The belt that went around the Kohen Gadol. So the Mitteler Rebbe took off his belt and kind of put it under the bed, took it under the bed to shake the belt so Freda should see the belt and she should ask about the belt. I think the story goes, and I 100% remember correctly, I think the Alter Rebbe caught him and threw him out. But that was the Mitteler Rebbe. It was all about Chassidus. They say that one year on Yom Kippur, again, I can't even begin to describe the greatness of the Mitteler Rebbe. Mamish, a level, a tzaddik on such a high level that we're talking about someone so huge, the Mitteler Rebbe. When the Talmidei HaMagid, the students of the Magid, felt that the Alter Rebbe was teaching too much Chassidus. Even his own colleagues thought the Alter Rebbe was going too far in teaching Chassidus. There was Chassidus' special teachings. The Alter Rebbe knew that, like we always say, in order to get into the end zone, you have to put all your, you have to, like the Rebbe says in the Mimer, you have to open all the treasures. Some treasures may go to waste, some treasures may be misused, but there's no other way. You have to win the war. There's a game here. There's a final purpose here. It's not just to exist; it's to bring Mashiach. And so the Alter Rebbe was teaching tremendous Chassidus. And there's a letter, I believe, from Reb Baruch Mezebush, which was one of those who didn't really agree with Alter Rebbe's approach. Reb Baruch Mezebush was a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. And Reb Baruch Mezebush, it says that he once, that there was the Talmidim, the Reb Baruch Mezebush, were from the Apter of Rebbe. They were being mitzayir a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And so the holy Ruzhiner came to the city, and he had to make peace between the students, the Talmidim of the Alter Rebbe, and the students of Reb Baruch Mezebush. And the holy Ruzhiner said, and the Ruzhiner himself was a grandson of the Maggid Mizrich, giving you a little history. So the holy Ruzhiner says, what was the foundation of the disagreement between the Rebbe Reb Baruch Mezebush and the Alter Rebbe? That when it says that when the Baal Shem Tov went up to the Shemayim, he went up to heaven, and he went to the chambers of Mashiach, and he asked the Mashiach, Emasai Ka'asimar, when is Mashiach coming? Like the sign behind the Chaim Yisachar. When is Mashiach coming? When is the Master coming? And the Mashiach answered the Baal Shem Tov, L'chshiafutzu manesecha chutza. When the well springs of Chassidus are going to overflow, meaning to say that there's like water that overflows everywhere. And the Holy Ruzhiner says when the Baal Shem Tov heard how much you have to throw in order to bring Mashiach, he started to cry. So much so that we have to bring the well springs everywhere. The Baal Shem Tov this is the sacred teachings of Chassidus. He received it from his teacher, the holy prophet Achia Shaloni, which was the torch holder of the secrets of Torah. Now is the Baal Shem Tov's time to reveal it, but so much so he had to reveal it that the well springs go everywhere. The Baal Shem Tov started to cry. So the Reb Baruch Mezebush was concerned with his grandfather crying. If my grandfather's crying, so we have to be careful how much we spread in Chassidus. But the Alter Rebbe was paying attention to the answer. That Emasai Kasimar, how's Mashiach going to come? Crying, no crying. We have to do what we have to do. So there was a letter that Reb Baruch Mezebush wrote to Alter Rebbe when he's disagreeing with him. He writes, Mele, about you, it's nothing I could do, But what about your son, the Mitteler Rebbe? The Mitteler Rebbe is so holy, he felt he's being corrupted, so to say, by the methods of the Alter Rebbe Chas v'Shalom. So one year on Yom Kippur, and then we're going to go to the Parsha. The Alter Rebbe called in his son during Musaf, after Musaf, in the break on Yom Kippur, and told the Mitteler Rebbe that in heaven there's major kitroigim. There's adversaries who are saying negative things about the Mitteler Rebbe. Why? Because he's teaching too much Chassidus. Even in the lifetime of the Alter Rebbe, the Mitteler Rebbe is teaching Chassidus. And he said that there's adversaries. There's voices in heaven, and those are voices to be reckoned with, of the angels saying, Hi Tochen, how's he teaching so much Chassidus? And they wanted and there could be consequences when there's kitroigim, when there's adversaries. And the Mitteler Rebbe says, never mind, Tatis, say Chassidus. Means that even though he told him that there's adversaries and there's voices, and just say Chassidus. That was the life of the Mitteler Rebbe. And the Rebbe spoke in 78-79. On Motzei Shabbos Kodesh also, like this year, Tes Kislev, going into Yud Kislev. The Rebbe says that one of the lessons we can learn about the Mitteler Rebbe is that the Mitteler Rebbe, that the Mitteler Rebbe's life and his leadership started at the end of the war of Napoleon. And the Napoleon War, we know that the Alter Rebbe backed the Russian government. There were different tzaddikim, for instance, Shlomo Kaliner and others that wanted to back, felt that it was better for Jews. And there was also this messianic idea, not far from what's going on today, that Napoleon was like, because an usher in Mashiach, everyone believed Napoleon was this great guy. He's offering freedom to Jews. And the Alter Rebbe saw Napoleon as a tremendous tuma, as a tremendous impurity. And the Alter Rebbe was very against Napoleon and everything Napoleon represents. But other tzaddikim disagreed with the Alter Rebbe, and it was decreed in heaven that whoever blows shofar first is going to be victorious. And the Alter Rebbe went with the son, and Chassidim. He went to the mikveh, and the Alter Rebbe came out of the mikveh and took the shofar and blew shofar. He didn't even daven. The other Rebbes also woke up early, but they were davening. You have to blow shofar in the right place. So you have to have shachris, and you have to have chazar shatz. You have to sing a little bit. You have to bow a little bit. And then, of course, by 8 o'clock in the morning, you blow shofar. The Alter Rebbe woke up 5 o'clock in the morning. As soon as the sun rises, he went to the mikveh and blew shofar. And so after the passing of the Alter Rebbe, and that's where the Alter Rebbe is buried in Haditch, not buried where he lived, is that the Mitteler Rebbe they were running away from the war, and in the war there was all this turmoil. So a person would think that the Mitteler Rebbe was going to take, hey, welcome back, Pinchas. The Mitteler Rebbe would take time to kind of research himself, but immediately the Mitteler Rebbe started to see what he could do to help the Jewish people. The Rebbe says that from this we learn from the lesson of the Mitteler Rebbe that a lot of times in life we go through huge obstacles, spiritually, materially. We're going through our own, so to say, challenges, that sometimes when we get a little bit of a break, we think, okay, now I need a little time to recharge my batteries. Doesn't mean you have to sit down and watch a movie or go to a ball game. What do you think the Mitteler Rebbe is going to do? Go daven, learn Chassidus, kind of spend time with himself to elevate himself. No, the Mitteler Rebbe is right away. A person has to go and see if you have an opportunity to help someone else, to chazik someone else, to give chizuk. It's not about, so even if it's at the cost of your own, so to say, spiritual well-being. But as long as you're doing a favor for another Yid, that's what you're here in this world for. That's the lesson the Rebbe took from the Mitteler Rebbe. So we're going to the Parsha we learned this week, I'm just trying to kind of give some insight from the Mitteler Rebbe on the Parsha. This is our way of bringing in honor of the Mitteler Rebbe, and this, by bringing for the Mitteler Rebbe, it should bring us the flows of brachas if everyone needs in Gashmius, in Ruchnius, in Parnasa, in Simcha, in Mashiach. I mean, everything that a person needs just by bringing and mentioning the Mitteler Rebbe opens the floodgates of brachas and blessings. So this week's Parsha in Vayetze, we learn the story of Yaakov. Yaakov leaves Beersheba, he leaves the well of seven, he leaves the home of his parents, Yitzchak and Rivka, two tremendous giants like we spoke last week. And he goes to Haran. He goes back to where Avram Avinu left, and he has a mission. He has to do two things on a spiritual level, to take from the high and to give to the low. One is that there was tremendous sparks by Lavan. In Chassidus it explains Loven Elyon, the simplicity of Lavan. The word Lavan is white, like part of Reb Matthew's JPSI symbol, white. Hereb Shimon. So the Lavan is white, and there's a certain simplicity, high level of Lavan that Yaakov had to attain, and also to deal with Lavan in this world. And Yaakov goes down, and he lives a life. He becomes Yaakov Avinu in this experience. I mean, we don't know much about Yaakov before that. We know we have two real stories of Yaakov before this week's parsha. We have this. I mean, obviously the birth of Yaakov, but we have also Yaakov securing for himself halachically and without any dispute the firstborn, right? When he feeds last week, he feeds Esav lentils, and Esav is starving, and he gives up the firstborn to Yaakov, and the Torah testifies that it was a deal made that he gave over the firstborn to Yaakov. And then the next story we have of Yaakov really is Yaakov's of acting on that, so to say, is getting his right of the blessings, because he's the firstborn now. He has the Bechorah. And Rivka helping Yaakov, and all the story that we know that Yaakov, that's what we find, and at the end Yaakov was told by his parents to leave to go find a wife elsewhere. Rivka says, in my experience, what I see in the women here in Eretz Canaan of the time, they were not the women that she says, Katzti b'chayai. She says, I'm disgusted if with my life, if Yaakov were to marry the daughters of Canaan, of Ches. So they send him to Haran to find a wife by the daughters of Lavan. So he knew basically who he's going to marry. It wasn't like by Rivka, they weren't sure who, but by this case, by Lavan, he says, Yitzchak tells him, go to your uncle, and he has daughters, and go find yourself a shidduch. You're 70 years old. Come on, boy, go and get married. And then of course Yaakov stopped. The Medrash tells us he stops 14 years in the yeshiva. Hashem and Maver, but we don't really know more about Yaakov. So we know Yaakov as a son, Yaakov as an independent person, kind of, so to say. We don't really learn much about him as much, so to say, in told us. But comes Vayetze, this is Yaakov. And the first thing that happens to Yaakov is he's stripped of any kind of security from home. His credit cards, his checkbooks, his diamonds, his gold, all taken from him. As soon as he leaves home, Esav sends his son Eliphaz, who's the patriarch, the father of Amalek. Right? We face the issues of Esav and Amalek throughout our history till today. And so Eliphaz is the father of Amalek, and he's the eldest son. He's the Bechor of Esav. But he also knew Yaakov. Yaakov is his uncle Jake. His favorite uncle Yaakov. He only has one uncle from his father's side, and so he has Uncle Yaakov. And Yaakov, he grew up, it says, in the house of Yitzchak, Eliphaz. So it says, the Torah tells us, Rashi says, he grew up in Chekesh Yitzchak. He grew up in Yitzchak's house. Although Amalek was a mamzer, and Eliphaz was doing all kinds of things he shouldn't be doing. He slept with his father's wives. I mean, he was really a piece of work, Eliphaz. But nevertheless, he grew up in Yitzchak's home. And he goes to Yaakov and he says, what did I do? My father told me to kill you. So Yaakov says, I can, take everything I have. You take everything I have, so ani chashav kameis, a poor person's like you're dead. So Yaakov has to totally he's on his own. And it's not, everything's about shkacha pratis. Imagine Yaakov would have come to Lavan, with his gold and his diamond and his Rolex and his being, Yitzchak was a very wealthy man. The Torah says Yitzchak was a very wealthy man. He was mamash wealthy. They said so he was so wealthy that the people in Gerar, the people in Philistine, were saying that Yitzchak's so much greater than Avimelech the king, right? So Yitzchak's very wealthy, and here he's coming to his uncle's house without anything. Imagine he would come in with all of them. Lavan was a person that respected money. So if Lavan would have seen Yaakov money, he would have maybe treated him nicer, because Yitzchak. But no, Yaakov has to start all on his own. Everything before him, he's on his own, and he has a dream. And in the dream, he has the angels are leaving and the angels are coming. And he's sleeping over Har Abayis. He's on Har Moriah. And God promises him that you're going on a journey now. He's starting, it's like in Chassidus explains that in order for a seed to come into a tree or to a plant, the seed has to dissolve. A seed means the seed is a seed. A seed is not much, You could look at a seed and there's not much there. It's this possibly you could be informed, or you can know because of your experience that this is an apple seed, or this is an orange seed, or this is another kind of seed. But from the seed, you don't see anything. And if you were to bite the seed, you don't taste an apple or an orange. It's just a seed. But this seed to become a tree, but there's one condition. For the seed to become a tree, it has to dissolve. It has to not just dissolve, it has to rot into the earth, lose its whole identity. And only then it could become a tree. Yaakov could not. God is promising Yaakov that there's greatness coming. But for this greatness to happen, there's a process. And so the process is you're going to have to become your own person. You're not going to be able to attach anything to mean I'm the God of your fathers, and you have this chusim of your fathers, but you're going to have to create from the beginning. You're starting all over as far as you're coming with chusim, but you're not coming with, you're riding on your own merits. And I'm going to be there with you on this journey. And there's a purpose for this journey. The journey is that by becoming the strong Yaakov, you're going to become like Yosef, his son, right? Yosef did the same thing. Yosef was also the son of a great giant, of a wealthy man, of a huge person. But Yosef also, he was only able to become viceroy. And the most powerful person in the world in those days, that was probably the most powerful person in the world for many generations. Because Yosef was pivotal in changing world order. I mean, there was the kingdoms, but there was no empires before Yosef. Yosef created the Egyptian empire, which, of course, there was negative for the Jewish people. And in theory, that was to be most of the work that had to be done to get us ready for Mashiach was done by Yosef when he went down to Mitzrayim. But again, Yosef started all on his own, even harder than his father. Yosef Yaakov at least went to Lavan, who said, we're family. No, we're family. I have to help you. Yosef he was sold as a slave, and he ended up in prison for 12 years. And from there, he became the viceroy. That's it says, Elah told us Yaakov Yosef. But but Yaakov comes and he says Hashem promises him, you're going to go down to love and like in Haran, you're going to go get the sparks. These are these two pivotal moments of our history before Matan Torah, Yosef and Yaakov, each one of them going down to their place. Yaakov had to go to Haran, Yosef had to go to Mitzrayim, even deeper, Eretz Cham, and non-mishpacha people, non-family people. And over there, Yaakov is promised. And again, it's the Torah of the holy Mitteler Rebbe. The Mitteler Rebbe says that the V'shafti b'shalom b'beis avi v'haya v'ayili l'likim, that Yaakov took all the stones, the different ideas, and the idea that Yaakov is that to find in everything in life, to strip it of its identity, so to say, of its separateness, and to be able to create a single stone, to be able to elevate everything that there's, when you have this higher agenda, this higher simplicity, to know that everything you do, no matter what method you do it, some people have a strength in their voice, some people have a strength in their hands, some people have a strength in their mind, some people have a strength in their feet, some people are better at this, some people are, everyone, but it's all the same purpose. It's serving Hashem and making this world a dwelling place for Hashem. Then when I could do that in a way, if a shafti b'shalom beis avi, I return whole complete in my father's home, then v'haya v'ayili l'likim, then I'm going to elevate so high that what today seems as abstract, today what seems like havaya, something the creator that's beyond creation, something that's yudke vavke, that's beyond my limitations, that's going to be my reality. V'haya v'ayili l'likim. And that's the avodah of Yidden Galus. And Yaakov was the first that was the avodah of the Yidden Galus. And that's why it says Yaakov, one of the reasons he loved Rachel over Leah was because to Yaakov it wasn't about concept. Rachel is speech and Leah is thought. Leah is in her own space. Rachel is communication. So it's very nice. You have good ideas in yourself. What are you telling others? What are you communicating to others? How are you affecting other people? It's self-perfection. It's going out there and turning the world into a place of godliness. And therefore it says Yaakov loved Rachel because he didn't want to remain as a concept, as a thought. He needed to communicate, he needed the world of speech. It says that, and here's an amazing thing that the Mitteler Rebbe says. The Mitteler Rebbe says that in Torah Chaim, that Lavan, it says that Yaakov left his fathers and he went to Lavan. What does it mean to leave your fathers and go to Lavan? The fathers are your mind, your sechel, your intellect, your chachma, your bina, your wisdom and understanding. When the very important parts of us, to understand Hashem, to have control of our midas, of attributes. But there's one downside. When your emotional connection to Hashem is how much your mind understands, which is part of our avodah. We say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Think about it. Here, pay attention, and then you're going to have v'yahavti. You can love God, but you only love as much as you understand. It means you understand when it makes sense to you. It makes sense to you to be a yid. It makes sense to you to be to do avodah, and therefore you love Hashem, and therefore you have chesed and gvura. But Yaakov says, no, I left my father's home. I left everything from there. I was stripped of anything. I had no collateral. I had nothing in my pockets left over for my seichel. I went to Lavan because Lavan is the connected midos beyond the seichel. It's the white, the simplicity. I want to feel love for Hashem. I want to connect and teach love for Hashem and bring it all the way down to Rachel, the daughter of Lavan, that it shouldn't be limited to how much I understand. What does it mean that Yaakov became so overwhelmingly powerful and wealthy? Was that he was so connected to Hashem that he wasn't limited to how much he understands. It wasn't limited to how much it made sense to him. He didn't have to rationalize an act of chesed. He didn't have to rationalize gvura or beauty of Hashem. He didn't have to understand it and say, okay, it makes sense to me. He went away from that. He went to Loivan. He went to the whiteness that the midos are at its highest point, beyond understanding. And he says, and not only that, not only was he able to get in touch with that, he was able to communicate that in Rachel, that she was like Yahrzeit. And these are the teachings, again, where we're celebrating the birthday, the Yahrzeit, and the Chag HaGeulah of the Mitteler Rebbe, who taught us these things and showed us the path and paved the way. Like it says, everything we have, all the brachas come b'shvil chanina b'ni, because of my son Chanina ben Dosa. The Chassidus explains, the Baal Shem Tov explains Bishvil, that the path is created by Reb Chanina ben Dosa. The path for us of how we could know what to do. What's the direction? What is our focus? What's our drive? What are we trying to achieve? These paths were paved for us by the great tzaddikim, our leaders, the Rebbes, and we celebrate specifically now the path that's been given to us by the Mitteler Rebbe, and the ability to learn Chassidus and understand Chassidus, but even higher than that, to connect mamish to our core. That we're and the way to do it is like the Mitteler Rebbe explains that Yaakov, what did he do in his whole avodah of love, and he dealt with the sheep. It says everything he had was because of the sheep. If he had oxes, is because he sold sheep. Rashi says he was able to sell his sheep for a lot of money. So he bought oxes, and he bought donkeys, and he bought servants and maidservants. He was very wealthy, but everything was because of tzon. What's the idea of the tzon? What's the sheep? The sheep is bittul. If you want to be free, to get in touch with loved one, to get in touch with your emotions, beyond even your sechel, beyond your understanding, beyond what makes sense to you. If you want to feel safe, then you have to use your sechel. If you want to be free of that need to feel your mamish connected, is you have to have bittul. When it's not about you, so you could have connection to loving. Then you can have connection to loving on the high level of really getting in touch with being comfortable, loving Hashem not because it makes sense, being comfortable, fearing Hashem not because it makes sense. But in order for that, you have to have tzon, you have to have bittul. As long as it's about you, as long as you're feeling self, you're never going to have anything. You're going to be stuck. Everything you have, shor, chamor, all the great things that you could achieve. And then that's Yaakov. That was the whole story of Yaakov. He started all over again. He was like the seed. He grew to this huge tree of the 12 tribes. A tribe, is a shevet. A shevet is a branch. All the branches of Yaakov that have the avodah of Reuven and the avodah of Shimon and Levi. These are all great giants that were born in different ways of paths of serving Hashem, but it all became, Yaakov was able to create this family and create his mission and start what we're going to finish now. The Chag HaGeulah is not just a redemption for the Mitteler Rebbe, it's not just a redemption for Chassidim, it's a redemption for Yiddishkeit, it's a redemption for the world. That with the teachings of Chassidus, with the teachings of our Rabbeim, with the teachings of the Mitteler Rebbe, with the lessons we have from the Mitteler Rebbe, we're going to march together with Mashiach Tzidkenu. I just want to finish off, we spoke many times. Zohar, the Rebbe quotes that on the 25th of the month of Elul, that Dorach Kochov Miyakov, that the Zohar says that on the 25th of Elul, a star is going to shoot forth from Yaakov, which is going to be the beginnings of the comings of Mashiach. So when a shooting star, you don't see right away. When is Mashiach going to come? The Sof Shivim Yom, after 70 days. And if you count today's calendar, they take the 5 days of Elul, from the 25th through the 29th, right? It's 5 days. And you take the 30 days of Tishrei, of this year, and you take the 29 days of Mar Cheshvan, that was this year, was a short month. And you add to it the 6 days of Kislev. So tonight and today, here in Eretz Yisrael, we're the 70th day of the 25th of the month of Elul. So may it be that this at the Zohar says that 70 days after the 25th of Elul, Mashiach should come today. The Sof, he says at the end of 70 days, but now we're in the 71st day. So may it be that the coming Mashiach comes taka today, and you have to know that if the Zohar says that after 70 days Mashiach is going to come, that definitely today's a day of geulah. There's a tremendous connection to redemption today. So anything that a Yid needs today in brachas, in parnasa, in gesund, in shalom bayis, in simcha, in nachas, all the things that we need in our geulah pratis. If the Zohar says that on the Sof Shivim Yom is going to be the geulah, so at least we're going to start with the geulah pratis, and that's going to lead to the geulah klalis with the Mashiach Tzidkenu l'chaim. Everyone, good Shabbos, good Yom Tov. Is Yud Kislev is a Yom Tov, so good Yom Tov and good Shabbos. Matthew, you still with us?
Yom Tov, good Yom Tov, good Shabbos.
Shabbos, but you're on mute though.
Yes, I am on mute and I'm still with us.
Okay.
I was with you last week. I just couldn't get to it fast enough, and so I'm always with you. I enjoy listening to every word you have to say. Sometimes I wish we can do this more. So for those of you who are like me and wish we can do this more, Rabbi Mindy does more classes at the 8 o'clock time of our local time zone. If you're interested in finding out how to log into those classes, please reach out to me or Rabbi Mendy or Reb Shimon, and we will be happy to tell you how to join in some of these other classes. I'm also going to take a minute and remind everyone that Rabbi Dr. Trachman is offering classes at 7 p.m. local time, and yeah, lots of classes, lots of good things to learn. So yes, please join us.
Shakach. Well, everyone, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Like we start off the class again, we're very grateful. It's a holiday of giving thanks, and Hashem should bless the United States of America and the world with shalom and peace, and we should be thankful. Always be thankful. Laila Tov and good Shabbos.
Amen. Laila Tov.